Hey everyone, it's week 4 of lockdown of quarantine. I don't know about you guys, but patience is probably wearing thin. You're stuck at home, life is tough, life is difficult, you're around the same people, confined. Patience is probably wearing thin. Well, patience also happens to be the fourth fruit of the Spirit and what we're going to talk about today. It goes love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. So, all right, patience is the fourth fruit of the Spirit. So obviously we need it, but what purpose does it serve really? At least from a biblical perspective. Why is patience so important? And Paul answers that question in a really cool way in Romans chapter 5, verses 3 through 4. And it says this, not only that, but we rejoice in our sufferings, knowing that suffering produces endurance, and endurance produces character, and character produces hope. This translation uses the word endurance. Some use patience, but really endurance and patience are almost the same thing. We're going to talk about that in a second. But before we can get there, we need to acknowledge what suffering is and what that looks like. And if I can just be blunt with you guys, a lot of you are acting like everything's fine, but really you are in a time of suffering. It's really easy to take this approach of there's only two options of everything's fine or life is horrible. My parents or grandparents or family are in the hospital or really sick with COVID or losing their job. All right. But here's the thing. There's a middle ground. There's a place where you can say, yeah, I'm blessed. Life isn't as horrible as some people, but I'm also not perfectly okay right now. Life is tough. My school year just got upended. Right as I was starting to solidify friendships, or right as things were starting to look on the upswing, right as I was starting to develop some good habits and rituals and go deeper with friends, life got flipped upside down in a way that no one has experienced before. And you know what? It's wearing on my mental health. It's wearing on my spiritual health. I am suffering right now. And I want to give you guys the freedom, not me, but just the reality that you can acknowledge right now is a tough time. And once you do that, once you lean into the fact that there is some suffering going on in your life, you have the option to develop patience out of that suffering. And if you think about patience or endurance, at least when it comes to an athlete, how does an athlete develop endurance? Say an athlete can only comfortably run 1 mile. Well, the only way that they're going to get to mile 2, the only way in which they're going to develop the endurance that it takes to get to mile 2 is when they hit mile marker 1, they have to push themselves. They have to go farther than mile marker 1. And it's tough and it stinks and it's hard and it's difficult. But the only way they can develop the endurance to run 2 miles comfortably is to be uncomfortable. Patience is the same way. Patience is the emotional equivalent of what endurance is to physical discomfort. We develop patience by going through suffering, not physical necessarily, not all the time, but emotional, mental. Because the way it works is if you only have enough patience to say reach mile marker A, the only way you're going to develop enough patience to reach mile marker 2 is to go through difficulties at a mile marker level of 2. If you only have enough patience to deal with little things, the only way in which you're going to develop the patience to deal with big things is to go through some big things, through some big suffering. So right now, you guys have the opportunity to develop patience because you are suffering. And the way in which that's going to play out is things that bothered you last semester. When you go back to school next year, they're not going to seem like nearly as big of a deal because, hey, at least you're not at home. At least COVID isn't going around in the way that it used to. You are going to develop patience right now if you lean into and acknowledge the suffering in which you're in. And out of that patience, you're going to develop character. Another way that I like to explain character is it's really just proof. It's really just experience that when tough things happen, I did the right thing. When life got difficult, I didn't give up on my morals or my disciplines. I proved myself. Someone doesn't prove their character by simply saying, I'm a good person. They prove their character by proving themselves when tough things happen in life. And so the way in which patience develops character is what happens is when you go through something difficult and you have the patience to endure it, you have the patience to go through it, you're going to learn lessons. You're going to grow. You're going to get a better understanding of who you are and what your role is in life and how to handle things. But the only way in which you can develop character, the only way in which you can get experience is having the patience to to go through those tough things. And the only way in which you can have patience is to deal with tough things. So it just builds on itself. And it is out of character that we develop hope. And it's done in a really beautiful way. When you first give your life to Jesus, you are putting hope in God through faith. But as your life starts to transform, as Jesus starts to do a work in you, you're putting hope in God because of the transformational work in which he's done in you. See, when I look back on my life 5-10 years ago, I am such a greater man of character because of what God has done in my life. And when I look at who I used to be and who I am now, it gives me hope in the power of our Savior. And guys, I want to challenge you right now in this midst of suffering, you have the opportunity to not just develop patience, to not just develop character, but to develop greater hope because God can grow you right now. God can challenge you right now. You can become a better person because of the suffering going on in your life right now. That's why Paul says we should rejoice in it, because it's out of suffering that we develop patience, we develop character, and we develop hope. But it starts with patience. And so I want to challenge you guys. When you start to get frustrated, choose to be patient. When you start to feel overwhelmed, ask God to give you greater patience because the suffering isn't really an option right now. There's no getting away from the difficulties. So embrace them so that you can develop patience and character and hope.